Welcome to the Secrets of the Bible channel. The miracle of Jesus feeding the 5,000 had just concluded, and Jesus desired some time alone to pray. So, he instructed his followers to board a boat and sail to the opposite side of the Sea of Galilee. Jesus desired some alone time to pray. Matthew 14:22 Immediately, Jesus made the disciples get into the boat and go on ahead of him to the other side, while he dismissed the crowd. The disciples were ordered by Jesus to get into the boat and travel ahead of him. They were in God's perfect will and about to enter a perfect storm, demonstrating that following God can sometimes be difficult. Nonetheless, it is only possible for it to reach you because of divine design and permission. Matthew 14:23 and 24 After he had dismissed them, he went up on a mountainside by himself to pray. Later that night he was there alone, and the boat was already a considerable distance from land, buffeted by the waves, because the wind was against it. When the boat was far from the shore, they were battered by the waves, because the wind was against them. And where was Jesus? He'd gone up the mountain by himself to pray. Though Jesus was absent from them, he wasn't unmindful of their needs. Paul told the Romans that Jesus intercedes for believers. His full-time job is serving as the intercessor between you and God. And he's the perfect one to do it, because he's fully God and fully human. He understands God, and he understands you. Shortly before dawn, Jesus went out to them, walking on the lake. When the disciples saw him walking on the lake, they were terrified. "It's a ghost," they said, and cried out in fear. But Jesus immediately said to them, "Take courage, it is I. Don't be afraid." In the middle of the disciples' sorrow, Jesus approached them on the sea, walking. Their difficulty was the raging seas. And that's exactly what Jesus walked on. He appeared to them in an unexpected way. Jesus exhibited his divine control over the universe he created, as he had done previously. When the disciples became concerned because they mistook him for a ghost, he soothed them with his words before addressing their situation. Matthew 14:28 through 32. "Lord, if it is you," Peter replied, "tell me to come to you on the water." "Come," he said. Then Peter got down out of the boat, walked on the water, and came toward Jesus. But when he saw the wind, he was afraid and beginning to sink, cried out, "Lord, save me!" Immediately, Jesus reached out his hand and caught him. "You of little faith," he said, "why did you doubt?" And when they climbed into the boat, the wind died down, and Peter did something no one else would have done. He requested Jesus' permission to join him. Peter didn't only want to keep out of trouble. He wanted to have an encounter with Jesus that he never imagined possible. So Jesus called Peter forward, and the fearless disciple began walking on water. He felt scared, began to sink, and cried out to Jesus to save him. When he lost concentration on Jesus and focused on the strength of the wind, Matthew wants readers to realize that it was Jesus' power, not Peter's, that made this miracle possible. Before you look down your nose at Peter, though, keep in mind that he was the only one who got out of the boat to attempt the impossible. As Peter took a bold step forward in trust, the other disciples just stared. Remember, Jesus rebuked him for having little faith, not for having no faith. Furthermore, Peter knew where to turn when he began to sink. When Jesus heard Peter's cries, he grabbed him and took him into the boat, and the wind ceased. Matthew 14:33-35. Then those who were in the boat worshipped him, saying, "Truly, you are the Son of God." When they had crossed over, they landed at Gennesaret. And when the men of that place recognized Jesus, they sent word out to all the surrounding country. People brought all their sick to him. Why would Jesus purposefully put his followers in such a frightening situation? Take a look at what happened after he rescued them. The disciples prostrated themselves before him and explained, "Truly, you are the Son of God." You could be wondering, isn't this something they already knew? They did, but with each new encounter, Jesus increased their understanding and deepened their experience of him. They had been given an opportunity to know and worship Jesus on a deeper level by God's grace. Despite their terrible circumstances, he is God's sovereign Son who wields all power, and he wants you to see that he is greater than your fears. 3 of the 4 gospel accounts, Matthew, Mark, and John, all include this miracle that is now almost universally regarded as a cliché, Jesus walking on water. Matthew 1422 through 33, Mark 6:45 through 52, John 6:16 through 21. Here are 4 takeaways from this incredible story. Number 1, our storms are known to Jesus. When we go through our own storms, we often wonder if this one slipped by Jesus' notice. He is aware of everything that is going on in your life. Number 2, it's easy to not recognize Jesus. When Jesus came to the disciples' boat through the tempest that had threatened their voyage, Scripture tells us that the disciples did not recognize him and even mistook Jesus for a ghost. As funny as that sounds, how often do we find ourselves in the midst of a storm, not recognizing Jesus or his move? Sometimes we may not recognize him, but Jesus is on his way to rescue us from our storms. Number 3, doubt will only cause us to sink. Some accounts show us how Peter was also asked to go to Jesus in the same way. The first steps worked well for Peter, but when he saw the waves, he began to sink. Likewise, our doubt, as harmless as it may seem, could be the exact reason why we sink into despair and hopelessness. For this reason, faith and complete trust in Jesus are crucial as we go through our storms. Number 4, Jesus helps us complete our journey. No matter how difficult the journey or mission you are on, Jesus is able to bring us through it. Scripture tells us that, and immediately the boat was at the land to which they were going.